I want to start with a question. How many here has given the way you organize your company or the way the company you work at is organized a thought? Quite a lot of people. When you have been looking at those parts, have you been thinking about different models, or have you been focusing in how do we actually fit in our company in a structure kind of like this? Is it anybody who has been thinking about not organizing your company like this? Huh? That's quite a good response, because most people, when organizing their companies, does not at all think that there's another way of organizing your company than this traditional hierarchy way of organizing your company. You actually say, okay, which departments do we have and which persons are going to fill the role of vice president of sales? Who can we put in charge of the production? Who is going to be the CTO of the company? And so on. And then how many people are going to work below that person? This is actually quite visible in other organizations. I just love this explanation of how larger organizations are structuring themselves. With the Amazon approach, the Google, the Facebook, that is quite different, Microsoft and Apple. And one thing that most of them have in common is that they're just variations of this CEO, department boss, middle management, and workers. My favorite here is actually Oracle, who has kind of like this tiny bit for production stuff and then the legal department. But that's another story. That's more of an open source story. So if we look at how these organizations really work when you get down to business, I think this symbolizes a lot of organizations. You see these smiling faces and a bit sadder faces and everything, and these people are people put into roles to govern other people. But I have actually never seen an organization that works in these parts, top to bottom. It's always these parts of like, we really like each other, that guy is going to get a lot more attention than that guy, and then people have their different parts and they like to do different things. We have another problem with this part, is that these guys here, if they want to communicate with this guy here, it's a really complicated process. If we take, for example, the marketing department, that is one common part in larger organizations, and then the IT department. And we have somebody who is in charge of the company's blog on the web page in the marketing department, and social media hits everything, and they say, oh, we need a share button. This guy comes up with that idea. And he wants to contact that guy over in IT to get this part done. Then he have to go up, and probably they will have to go up all the way to the top in some cases, and then down. This is not a good way of structuring your company. In the old days, when we needed to get a lot of stuff done, like building parts on löpande band, on like automation lines, this was fairly okay, because you needed a lot of people and they needed to do the same thing, and then you needed a boss. And actually one important thing in this is that Holacracy and that way of organizing your company is one way of organizing your company. but it's one of the first that actually thinks of organizing your company in a different way that's not based on hierarchy and putting people in different stages of the organization. This is a screenshot of how our organization works right now and how our organizational scheme is looking. I'm going to get back to this part a bit more during the presentation and also go into that part. I'm just going to say that this S&M part is sales and marketing. We get a lot of mix-ups on that part. And then I'm just going to pinpoint one thing that's really important. We're an organization on 25 people. And as you can see here, we have a lot of circles and a lot of more circles than 25 people. I just want you to keep that part in mind. But just a quick look back to how this all started for my company. I have been with from the start, from 2 people to 10 people to 15 people and to 18 people and now 25. All the stages have gone quite simple because from 5 people to 10, that was a big difference going from a small group to a larger. And then from 10 to 18, I saw that we need some way of like governing this part. So I put together a management group of 5 people. So half of the company were in the management group and representing different parts. And without that part, we wouldn't have been able to go to 18 people because it would have been really chaotic. So we got that part up and rolling. And then we got to 18 plus people. And I knew that if I want to grow my company to be larger than 20, I would need something more than a management group, because I started to see things like we have some people there and it's getting too hard for 5 people to govern this organization. So I actually went back to, okay, what do I know about organizing a company? I actually know this part. So I started thinking of how do we structure this and get these different departments. And we're a digital production agency, so we have a large group of people producing web pages, intranets, and different open source systems. And I saw that, okay, I can put like a production department, but then who is going to run that? A designer or a programmer or who? Or should I perhaps have 3 different parts? So 3 parts one for the designers and 1 for the programmers and so on. And my mind was just like, oh my God, it's no right way of doing this. So at that time, I was actually working with a guy on ESS, the European Spallation Source. And he's a really cool guy, and you should check out his webpage, because now he's a freelancer. He has the Modern Group, it's called. But he posted a note on Facebook. Oh, Holacracy, a new way of working. And this was actually 2 weeks before our julavslutning, Christmas send out. And I was just like, oh my God, we really need this organizational scheme. If I want to build an organization that I would be comfortable with as a CEO or as an employee, this is it. So on our part there, I think it was 3 days before, so I changed the agenda and just put down last part of this is what we're going to do next year. And I'm going to get back to that story of how it went as well. But before that, I'm going to give you the hard facts about Holacracy and what it means and what it does. So we have seen the problem, And of course, not for all organizations. Yet again, all organizations are different. So I'm not saying that Holacracy is the one organization scheme to replace all others, because it's not. But it's one of the first organizational schemes that are in the basics different from the hierarchical parts. So one of the main difference is that we are structuring our company in roles and not titles. As you saw and can see here, we have more roles than we have people in the organization. And that's because Holacracy focusing on the part of what needs to be done to get this company working. We apparently need somebody to take care of our blog. We obviously need somebody who is programming in PHP or Node.js, and we need a lot of stuff. But we actually don't have the role web developer, and what you're doing then can be applied on 10 different people. But we have the task for web development in PHP, for example. So this is a major change from different organizational schemes. It has a different way of looking on the power of a company. As I said, I'm not the CEO of Odhill. I am the lead link. And I actually divide up my power between lead link, facilitator, and secretary. I'm going to go in more on those parts, but I don't have the power to change the organization any more than any other in the company. And in some parts of these parts, I have distributed an assignment for the internal development, for example, or not I, sorry, stuck in old ways. But the group here has said, we need somebody who takes care of our Git flows, our development processes, and so on, and support our team. And it's not for like one person, and we can control it, so we're just going to put that in another circle. And in that circle, if you're not part of it, you don't have authority to change parts and be in there. Another part that's also really, really different is that this scheme comes with a structured process for meetings. We actually don't have any meetings that are in the organizational scheme that are just meetings. We have a process for each meeting. And we have two different types of meetings. Before Holacracy, often in our management group meetings, we could be sitting and discussing a strategy question for the company. But after half an hour, 45 minutes, we saw that now we're actually discussing something that is practical and something that is actually way off from the subject. If we started by discussing which people and how should our blog strategy be, then we could end up in actually who is going to take the photos on the web page next time. And I don't think it was we who were different. I think most people have been in one of those meetings. And also on this part, when we put in Holacracy, we could actually take our business plan and stop working with it. Because in Holacracy, you actually work with your business plan all the time. The way you actually should work with a business plan, instead of doing it once a year, looking it through, and planning out the next year, and then putting it in a box and leaving it. So, some parts of the structure that I was telling you about now is important to know. We have a circle. and we have different kinds of circle. We have large circles, and we have circles in form of roles, and we have circles that are a combination of roles. I know this can be a bit tough to grasp, but I hope to make clarity of it during this time. Each circle, like internal development, sales and marketing, support, or general circle, has a lead link, a facilitator, and a secretary. The lead link, who is me in the general circle, is the closest thing you got to a boss in this organization. The fun part is that on all of these roles and all of these parts, I have actually not made it, but people have done it in a meeting, because the lead link is actually only differ from another employee in one way or two ways. It's the lead link has the authority to say who can be assigned to which role. But in a meeting, he has no other authority at all. But people are then creating the roles, and then the lead link can say, okay, I know that Carolina is really good on internal communication. She is going to be on that role. And I know that Kalle is as well, so he's not also going to be on that role. And if you see that somebody is not performing their role, you can take them away from it. Yeah? To change. Exactly. Then he can take them away from that role, and he'll say, sorry, it's not working out. I can see that you don't have the time to actually handle internal communications right now, so I'm going to take you away from that role and put somebody else on it. And an important part and a carrot for the lead link to actually do this is that any role that's not filled is the lead link's responsibility. So on yesterday's governance meeting, we saw the need for an office assistant, kind of like picking up coffee cups and so on. And as you can see here, that part is white, so it's unassigned. So actually right now I'm the office assistant. So I'm going to need to change that and put somebody on it.
And each circle has its own lead link.
Exactly.
And as main lead link, you can assign every role down the circle line, or can you
only the lead link?
Okay.
So I can actually only change the lead link, who can then change roles within the circle. But that lead link can't go in. If I'm not happy with the way internal development is doing their job, I can actually not do anything except change the lead link. And he can't go in there and say, okay, all this part that the former guy did was crap, so I'm going to do a total reorganization, because that's being done in a meeting. And that's also a big difference. And as I see it, a big benefit, because people who get a new role in kind of management tend to like to throw out everything the guy did before to put their own mark. And that's not so wise in most cases. And then actually we have a facilitator and a secretary. And this is a part that's kind of important in the meetings we have. I'm going to get back to those later on. The facilitator is actually the person who is kind of like chairman of the meeting. He distributes the word to people, and as the lead link, he has no other perks than that. And the facilitator is voted by the group and by the people who are there for like a 6-month period of time to keep track of the meeting and ensure that it follows the Holacracy structure. And actually for me as a former, I was handling our management team, and then I were forced to sit there and interrupt people and say, now we're going to get back to the subject and all of those parts. And just letting go of that responsibility is enormously nice. And I actually think it's good for the respect of the person there, because if you need to interrupt people or you need to govern the meeting, then you're not going to be sitting and thinking of strategy and actually performing your best. And the secretary is there to actually be a support to the facilitator on keeping track of the constitution, and then also taking notes of it. The replic role is a role to actually exchange part between the different circles. So, for example, if sales and marketing have a problem with our production department, they have a rep link who is going to talk for them in the production circle. I'm not going to go in details on that part, because there's a lot of more important parts to do to talk about here as well. But we have a way of communicating around these circles, which without actually have to go up to the ladder of hierarchy and down again. So the meetings. We have two kinds of meetings. Governance meeting and tactical meeting. Governance meetings are made to change how these parts are structured. If I see a problem or a role missing, or if I see a problem in the company, then I'm going to be in a governance meeting and stating my case, and then letting people say their mind about it and make a change. And then we have the tactical meeting, who is to follow up how things are going. And looking at metrics and checklists, for example, have we sent out our weekly letter? A basic part like that. Or have we met our production demand this month or not? And then also for keeping track of projects in the company that are not forced into this structure. Yeah.
During the governance meeting, is that when you decide the roles? Like
Yeah.
you need a new role.
Yeah. It can be things like, it doesn't even have to be a new role. It can only be that I have a problem with people being late. Well, the old way of doing is going to your boss and telling him, people are late, I'm really upset. Fix it. And the boss is going to say, yeah, of course, I'm going to help you with that. And then he's going to get back to his desks and see, okay, I have to manage the sales and those parts and put it down in the list. Instead, they say, people being late, I'm really upset about this. I'm going to craft a proposal for the governance meeting. And put in, for example, in this case, which is a real case, the human resource manager need to have accountability to talk to people who are late. And we need to have a policy on how to handle people who are late. And then taking that through a structural meeting on that case. Those meetings can actually take place over the net. You actually can craft a proposal, send it out, and say, I want your opinion on this. So if we have 6 core members, as they are called, then they can say, no objection, I'm fine with this, put it through. Or somebody can say, I don't really know about this part. I need to get more grasp of what you're meaning, or something. Then they can escalate it to a meeting. So the meeting can take place anytime, depending on how stressful the issue is. And it's the secretary who opens the meeting. So as a lead link, you don't even have the possibility to open a meeting. Well,
How do you make sure that each of these circles functions properly?
that's actually for the tactical meeting. So in the tactical meeting, all persons who are lead links in these circles, they are core members in the general circle. So on those parts, we have accountabilities for the different circles. For example, production, deliver projects after budget and on time. And on the tactical meetings, we have a monthly checklist. Have we delivered projects on or over budget? And then they have to report that part on that part.
But at the end, isn't it also a bit similar to the structure you showed before? Because it's just another way of presenting it. At the end, we still have people.
Yeah, actually on that part, one of the part that Holacracy is not, it's not a democracy. It's not a democratic system at all, actually. The only democratic part is choosing who is governing the meeting and everything. But it's really like one person sets the roles and everything. But it's a distribution of that power. That's the difference.
So how do you take decisions?
You actually take, and that's what I'm going to get into now, because that's also one of the completely wonderful parts about it. But just on that part, to stress that it's not a democracy, and it's not this consensus-driven organization where everybody needs to get along. It's an organizational scheme to get things done instead. So it's not that part of, okay, we all have to unite on these issues. It's not that kind of a system. Oh.
So one more question.
Yeah.
You just mentioned projects.
Yeah.
About external or internal?
Internal. That was also a part on the implementation process. Some project manager were wondering, do we need to put in our client projects in this structure? No. It's just keeping that part out. It's kind of what we're selling. So projects for us to our customers is like Volvo selling a car. So that's not in this part. Oh.
Maybe it comes later, but I'm just going to ask you now.
Yeah.
So where does values and company culture fit into this?
It's actually in policies. I'm not going to go into that so much now because I'm been focusing on the larger parts. But you have some different parts that you can create besides roles. And on that part is policy one of them. So a policy for core values has been crafted in a governance meeting.
How long are those meetings?
It's actually maximum of 1 hour. And then the tactical meetings are like 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And actually keeping them as short as possible. And on that part, I'm going to go to the part of how we are actually structuring a governance meeting to get decisions done. And this is where the parts that are complicated get even more complicated to grasp, and it always seems like a totally ridiculous way of doing things on. But it's actually really, really efficient. Parts in a governance meeting always starts with attention. It can be all from people are not picking up their dishes, or we actually need to raise the amount of billable hours, or our sales are not doing as well as they should, or anything. All problems you may have in a company. Attention. If you feel attention in the organization that is stopping you from doing the work that the roles you are assigned to are there, then you have the tension and you have the possibility and kind of like the obligation of taking it up and crafting a proposal on how to solve it. So on this part, and it's also an important part, you don't have the authority to say that guy over there who is working with design is feeling that this trouble. It have to be on the roles that you are yourself involved with. And this part is stopping me from doing my work as a developer day moderator, something like that. And what you do then is you present a proposal. You present what's wrong and how you would like to solve it. So say that, and this has actually never happened at us, a lot of craziest parts, but for an example, say that you think that the salespeople are exaggerating the quality of your product. Say that you're a hosting company and they say that we have 100% uptime all the time, we promise, and you're really upset with it. Then you could craft a proposal. If the role of salesperson or sales representative is in there, you could, for example, say that I want to add accountability on that role that says you cannot say anything that's untrue. So imagine that has been put up on the table in an ordinary meeting. The salesperson is not going to be happy. It's a blunt attack on his, and he has all of these parts. And of course, he has a lot of thoughts. And the basic part, what the person does then, is that he reacts. And he probably reacts with like, you're stupid, or I'm going to go on this part. Not that blunt, but perhaps like not getting the part. So therefore, we have a clarifying round, which is that we go round the table and each person gets to ask questions so that they get what the person is meaning, who has presented the proposal. And that person can then only answer the question. So he cannot like start a discussion or a debate, and the facilitator goes in and he says just like, no. And when that round is done and everybody has understood what the person taking up this attention is aiming at and what he's thinking, then we have the reaction round. So you're not allowed to react before you actually get what the person is saying. In that example of you as a salesperson can't say that we have 100% uptime. In a salesperson's head, that kind of sounds like, I can't promise any good uptime. But when you ask these questions, you get to know that, oh, we could perhaps, I mean that you can only say that we have 99.9% uptime. And then we have the reaction round, to just spill your gut. No discussion. We go round the table and everybody can say, I think this is a really good proposal. Perhaps you could do this and it would be better. Or you could say, I don't like this at all. It's awful. And just like, no. And on that part, the person who has presented the proposal cannot say anything. So no discussions. And the fun part is that if it's a really, really problematic subject, people tend to have a lot to say, but when you don't have anybody to discuss it with, it dies out. The next round is only for the person who has presented a proposal. It's amend and clarify. Because during the parts of questions and reactions, perhaps you have been thinking then, oh yeah, I got that in my proposal. I want to add that this, or I want to change something. I want to say that the salesperson should only be allowed to say our current uptime, and then like say that, and this is a really good uptime and those kind of parts. Or you could just choose to say, no, my proposal is really good anyway, and this is how I want it. So then you have like gotten the questions out of the way, and you have gotten the reactions out of the way. And now we come into the objection round, which is the part of discussions. Then we go around the table and ask everybody, do you have any objection to this part? And then you're only allowed to say like one sentence. I object to time management. I don't know, something like that. And then the facilitator puts out, okay, we're going to take them in this order, so that we get the parts done in a structured way. And when you have an objection, the objection needs to be valid. It needs to be an objection that this new proposal can damage the company, or it can bring the company backwards. You can't put in an objection and say, I don't like this. That's just like, no. You have to have a valid part of like saying, no, if we take that possibility for salespersons to lie away, we're going to have a problem in sales, or something like that. And then you get into a discussion part with the person who presented the proposal to solve it in between yourself. And when all objections are solved during this course, you start a new objection round. So you can't like build up, but then you get a new objection round and people straighten out these parts until there's no objections left. And on that part, we're getting the part done. Yeah?
But it means to me that the proposal is presented in one meeting and the decision should be taken in the same meeting.
Exactly.
I expect that some people need more time to think about a night over and stuff like this. What do you do in this case?
The great part, and that's also a mindset part of this, is that decisions that you are taking in a management group in ordinary company structures are decisions that are going to last for 3 months, 6 months, a year, for all time. We don't have that in Holacracy, because if you have seen this process go through, you always have the ability to take the night over, call a new governance meeting with your own proposal. And that's actually a really good question, because people have a bit hard to grasp that part, especially if you have been working for a long time in a bigger organization. These parts are not written in stones. All of these parts can theoretically change in one governance meeting. So
would you say that generally, because of the fluidity that you can change from meeting to meeting, it also does change more often, just who's responsible for what and how we use this?
yeah, actually, on those parts, sometimes I would say that some roles and some parts change really seldom. For example, if you have a developer who is mainly working with Node.js, he is not going to jump on PHP anytime soon. But if you have these parts that are like company administrative parts, those parts are changing quite rapidly. Because you can actually, on this fluid part, see that sometimes you actually have a tension in a general circle. For example, if we say for internal communications, that things are not communicated enough and enough well. And I want to add this, and sometimes there, and this is a good example of it, is that then we just get to the conclusion in the reaction round or in the clarification round that this is actually it's nothing wrong with this role. It's just that the person who is doing it is in a project right now that's taking up all of their time. And then we're going to quit that part on the governance meeting. And then the lead link will have to change the role there.
I don't hear you talk a lot about self-management and voluntary ways of acting, like can people volunteer to take a role, or is that any part of it, or is it always the lead link that
It's
points people to roles?
it's always the lead link who points roles to people, and there's actually no like structure for how the lead link is going to do that. But what I have seen is that in 99% of the cases, when a new role is formed, it's quite likely that that person who has formed that role gets it. And and actually, people have the full liberty to go to their lead link and say like, I want to have that role because I want that accountability. We have one role in the sales and marketing part who is a photographer who takes picture for our Instagram and those kinds of things. And that part is actually filling up quite rapidly. So,
One more question, sorry.
yeah.
You will come to communication processes later, right? Because of the changing structure every time. I think communication is the biggest part in this.
Yeah.
So we will come later on.
Yeah, I actually think that on that part I haven't got it in the lecture right now. I don't know how much time we have left.
Because
Zip. Oh.
sorry for asking. But because when a structure is changing within one governance meeting, there should be communication processes because the people don't
Yeah.
need to know it pretty soon.
Yeah, of course. And on those parts, that's why we have that internal communications. But then we also have this part of getting people used to that things change and actually getting people to go into this tool when they need something done. For example, if we change who is in control of coffee making, we don't have a role like that. But if we would have it and that role would have changed, people would probably go to the person who had a role for coffee making, and then he would say, no, sorry, I'm not the coffee maker anymore, but he knows who is. So getting those parts there. It's a bit getting to use.
It's working and
Yeah, actually the main parts are, as I see it on this part, is getting the important decisions out. So it's a bit of a complex part, and I think that's kind of like in all corporations, on getting the information out and actually getting people to accept the information. I'm just going to go on here because this is actually Odd Hill right now. And I have been talking so much, so I thought that I should show you on these parts. We're going to take internal communications. And this is a good way of showing each different role has a purpose. Distributing information about the organization in good timing. Domains, information surfaced in general circle, and internal communications tools like Slack and weekly letter and all of those parts. And then we have accountabilities. So that's how a role is made up. And on all of these parts, there's really a lot to show, but I'll have to put all of those parts in kind of like a next lecture, Holacracy in depth or something like that, because there's a lot of parts on these parts, but an overview. And I just have to, if you have 5 minutes more before we take the pizza, I just have to tell you a bit of the implementation. Because we're a young company. We're 25 people and the average age on the company is like 27. So we have some people who are 20s and some in their 40s and a kind of new company, only 6 years old. Still in this part, I can take a part because February we started the implementation. In March, I dissolved our management group, and these persons were in the general circle, but taking away titles from people who has had them is a really big deal. And it was actually a hard journey on that part for like 1 month, but then getting it in, and I'm hoping to never be forced to do another reorganization of the company, because now it actually does iterative organizational changes all the time.